Maduro and the media, at the beginning, he was trying to play the role of Hugo Chavez, being this strong man, and it didn't really work because he's not Chavez. Maduro doesn't have the ability to engage the people that Chavez has, but he's learning very fast. Maduro and his relationship with the media is a work in progress.
Usually, politicians try, at the very least, to appear to make nice with the media, even outlets they consider hostile. In Venezuela, such niceties go unobserved. Here are just some of the things Nicolas Maduro said about the Venezuelan media prior to the local elections, which were seen as the first unofficial referendum on his presidency.
Estamos siendo objeto de una censura programada de los medios de comunicación de la burguesía, televisión, radio, prensa, pero utilizan las páginas a llenarlas de veneno y de odio. Están buscando, ustedes saben qué, ¿no? Un clima social y económico que justifique un golpe de Estado en Venezuela. Mientras la censura se mantenga, nosotros vamos al combate con las cadenas nacionales de radio y televisión para que nuestro pueblo sepa la verdad de Venezuela.
And here is the flip side to that argument. Critics of the government, journalists, on what they call the one-sided coverage of the December 8th local elections.
Blackout informativo.
There was an information blackout during the elections, and this was clear when there were opposition rallies in Venezuela. And of the 52 radio stations that operate in Caracas, not one broadcast the rally live. Neither did TV cover it, and that instantly silenced the opposition. For 90% of the media in the country, the opposition simply did not exist.
The media coverage was the most embarrassing in history, unlike any other election. The government had an obscene advantage. We had the feeling that the media outlets had lost the democratic principle of presenting the other side of the story. And the government censored big media outlets, forcing Venezuelans to favor one political position.
2 points of view, polar opposites, and in a way, both are valid. When President Maduro talks about opposition media and coup d'etat, he is reminding Venezuelans of 2002, when the country's political right and 3 media outlets in particular, RCTV, Venevisión, and Globovisión, joined forces to temporarily force Hugo Chavez out of office. While Chavez was still under house arrest, the coup's leaders went on those channels and thanked them for the central role they played in overturning a democratically elected leader. When Venezuelans rallied and got their president back, RCTV and Globovisión went quiet and aired classic films and sitcoms rather than the news breaking in a direction the channels had not foreseen. Everything that has happened in Venezuela since then, involving politics and the media, should be seen in the context of 2002 and what leftists still call the media coup.
The people have been systematically duped by the media for the past 14 years. After the coup, there was an information blackout. When they wanted the reality to be different to what it was, when the people were on the streets around Venezuela asking for the return of President Chavez, the media stuck their heads in the sand, and they failed to inform the public of what was going on.
And that is when I pinpoint the end of Chavez as a moderate figure in politics and start Chavez as a more radical figure, okay? And that included his relationship with the media.
Viene el presidente a votar y la periodista de Televen no se le ocurre preguntarle nada sobre.
So the context, what it tells you is that the government has lost the traditional ability of politicians to deal with the media because there's no ability to mediate between black and white. There's no gray spaces in which establish a dialogue.
It has taken a decade for the fallout of that failed coup to be fully felt. In 2007, RCTV's broadcast license was up for renewal, which was denied. The TV channel was effectively out of business. Globovisión took longer. The broadcast regulators sanctioned the channel repeatedly for alleged violations. It was fined $2.2 million for the way it reported a prison riot in 2011. The channel was also being investigated for alleged tax evasion. Earlier this year, Globovisión's owners threw in the towel. and sold to a group led by an insurance executive with reported ties to the Maduro government. Between Chavez, Maduro, and the broadcast regulators, Venezuelan television has been completely reshaped, and critical voices are hard to find.
Con Maduro, por ejemplo, se gestó.
Under Maduro, they have figured out a way to control the media that was unknown up until now. When there are media outlets that make them feel uncomfortable, they just buy them out. These Chavista businessmen buy the channels out under their name, and the government remains invisible, and those sales are related to the wider strategy of closing down media. They use buyouts which look perfectly innocent at first glance as a way of controlling the media.
They've gone one step further now. The print media is under attack. Maduro recently lashed out on El Diario on TV for its reporting on petrol shortages.
Vienen a sabotear entonces, como hicieron en el 2002.
The next day, the outlet was facing a lawsuit. The newspaper El Mundo reported on how the central bank's foreign currency reserves were being used up, and the next day, they fired the editor. El Universal also said something about the shortages, and a legal investigation was launched immediately.
The print press's credibility has plummeted. There must be some reason for why the people aren't reading the papers from the big private outlets anymore. In elections last week, the Bolivarian Revolution won 80% of the mayoralties. That's 30 of the 40 biggest cities. But look at this headline from El Nacional.
Ever since Hugo Chavez was first elected in 1999, the Chavistas have had legitimate grievances with broadcasters owned by the right who were willing to back a coup if that's what it took to regain power. Some corrective steps were clearly necessary. However, Venezuelan media are no more reflective today of the society they serve than they were when right-wingers controlled the media. What the Chavistas have done is tilt the imbalance. The revolution continues to be televised their way. Our Global Village Voice is now on Maduro, the media, and the political power struggle in Venezuela.
Since the death of Hugo Chavez, I don't think the government is as active in confronting the media. However, that doesn't mean that the state isn't putting a lot of pressure on journalists. One example of this is that the editor of Venezuela's largest business daily, El Mundo, was fired after publishing a headline that was very critical of the government and its handling of the economy. So what we're left with now is the situation that I think the opposition and its politicians have a much harder time getting their message out to their supporters.
Now, the untold story of the Venezuelan media is actually the gradual democratization of the press, thanks to hundreds of community media outlets operating across the country. They're encouraged by the government with funding, but they enjoy editorial independence. These community media outlets should be central to this discussion, but their work often passes under the radar while we offer tea and sympathy to big corporations.